Our first fireside chat is going to be amazing. So it's going to be with Olivia Mancuso, is a former broadcast journalist turned entrepreneur, marketing expert, lifestyle influencer, and podcaster. Olivia will be interviewing DJ Lady D, who's a good friend. Hailed as Chicago's house music queen by Chicago Magazine, she has toured North America, Europe, Asia, and Russia as an international DJ, producer, and remixer. In 2004, she became a music publisher when she launched her independent record label and marketing brand, Delectable. I could actually write, many paragraphs about all the things that Lady D has done, but you can hear for herself. I'd like to introduce Olivia and Lady D.
Check, check.
Can you hear me? Great. Well, it's so nice to talk to you in front of all these people today.
Thank you all for coming out. It's great, and it's nice to talk to you too, Olivia.
Yeah, so I just want to set the scene a little bit. That was a great introduction from Daniel. But for people who may not know your story, you got into house music pretty much at its inception. Now, I read that you would go to something called Sock Hops, right, at Whitney Young High School, where DJs like Frankie Knuckles and Farley would come and play. Was that like your aha moment, like house music is for me?
Yeah, to be honest, when I was in high school, that was the thing, right? Sometimes there are these moments in the zeitgeist where, something happens cataclysmic. And house music for Chicago was that. So we had clubs that had started, like the Warehouse, Frankie Knuckles, transitioned from New York to Chicago, and Robert Williams bringing him here to, sort of like give us the taste of what clubbing was like in New York. But then Frankie also put his own twist on it. And from that, it really inspired a lot of people to also get involved. There were other people doing things at the same time, DJs like Ron Hardy and DJs that were playing in some of the clubs around town, like the Chosen Few. But it was sort of like the culmination of all of that happening at once. And then you get music tech that was changing at the same time, like the 303 and all of the rolling gear that suddenly became affordable and made home studios a thing.
Right.
And so the idea of, being able to record some music, put it on a reel-to-reel and take it to a club for a DJ to play, that was, pretty much the bee's knees at the time. Everybody that could make music started making music. And then you get a moment like 1984 when Vince Lawrence and Jesse Saunders were trying to, recreate a song and ended up, taking this equipment, this drum machine, this synthesizer, and creating a track, but putting it on vinyl. And that was like the song On and On. That was the first time that house music was actually on vinyl, and so that was 1984. So next year, we're going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of that first event, but the culture of house music had been building up from the late 70s, and then, when I was in high school in the 80s, it was like everywhere. And then you get BMX, WBMX, 102.7 FM, the Saturday Night Live, Ain't No Jive, house music dance party, going out to 2 million listeners. And that's why Chicago is the birthplace of house music. That's why it's so strong here. It's never gone away. But yeah, it was for everybody. It was so inclusive. And yeah, the sock hops in the gymnasiums. I mean, all the high schools were engaged in it because it was something for kids to do, and it was pretty wholesome. Like, we were just getting together, playing music and dancing, and that was okay with them. So the Catholic high schools would host parties on the weekends. They would let the promoters come in, bring in their huge sound systems, and then the DJs, and then 2,000 kids. I mean, this is proto-raving, right? So we would get together and gather and play music, and then at 12 o'clock, your parents would, come by and pick you up. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of things have changed in the scene since then.
A lot of things have changed.
Yeah. And so you got your start, correct me if I'm wrong, actually DJing in the 90s, right?
Yeah, so I had learned to DJ when I was in high school. I was one of the few people, well, I would say few girls that was, I guess, willing and able to kind of like hang out with the guys and DJ. My brothers, I had grown up with, you know, two older brothers. One was 11 years older than me, one was 14 years older than me. So they were DJs when I was growing up. And so I had, you know, real hi-fi equipment at my house. So Sony and Techniques and Pioneer and, you know, big speakers and stuff. They used to play around, you know, the neighborhood. And so I always felt comfortable around tech. I was always very tech forward. I would say I'm an early adopter to almost anything that comes out. And that was the thing that, you know, in high school, it was still a boys' club. And so if I were going to hang out with them, like I had to know some stuff, and I would be like, yeah, I know what that does, and, you know, you could do this with that. And so they kind of let me in, but I didn't start playing, until the 90s, because I went away to college after high school. I did have a radio show when I was in college, but I was pre-med and I was a biology major, so
Oh, wow.
yeah, I
A
went
little
to
different.
I know.
It's a little different.
So naturally, I went to medical school after college, and after 2 years of the program, I realized that I was doing the wrong thing. Like, I was unhappy, I was suffering because I just wasn't doing it for me. And even though I was capable of doing it, my heart wasn't really in it. I started to get depressed. I was wondering, what, you know, is this all there is? And we decided, the school and I decided that I would take a year off. Well, at the end of that year, I had, you know, I was much happier than I was before that year. And I realized that I could never go back to medical school because it was just not what I wanted to do. What I liked doing and what I discovered that year about myself was I loved going out, I loved being social, I loved going to the clubs, and the idea of being a DJ didn't really catch on, but I started dating a DJ. We moved in together, and all of a sudden, oh, these turntables, all this equipment is back in my life again, which I had kind of like repressed. And so when it came back to me, it felt really natural for me to want to do that. And I was encouraged, strongly encouraged by people who would come to the house and hang out with us, and they would be like, oh, you know, she's really good. Like, when are you gonna go out and play for people? I didn't really think of it as a viable career until, you know, after about, you know, 2 or 3 years playing in my bedroom or, you know, in our house for guests. And somebody put me on a flyer one day and said, hey, Darlene, I put you on this flyer. You need to play out in front of people. And I was like, okay. And so 1995, I go to this funky shoe store at Clark and Belmont called Soul Junkies. They used to have DJs on Saturdays. I got my first break. A lot of promoters from the city came down to see me because they were kind of interested, like, who is this girl and what's she gonna do? And then after that, like, the gigs started to flow, so.
Wow. That's incredible. So, I did not know that about med school, and so many of the artists that I've interviewed kind of talk about this cognitive dissonance that they experience between the things that they're supposed to do and what they're called to do.
Right.
And so it sounds like you kind of went through that a little bit yourself. So what, especially when it's something as serious as med school, walk me through that mental process when you realized this is not for me and I am being called to something else.
Well, the first year of med school was fine. It was really great, actually. I enjoyed it a lot. But the second year, I think the seriousness of it started to really hit home. It was, you know, it became a little more competitive. People got a little more, like, less friendly. And I think I just thought, like, I don't know if I like this environment. It's not feeding me in a positive way. And although I consider myself, you know, a go-getter and ambitious, that level of competition, it didn't thrill me. I wasn't, like, feeding off of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you know, some people really like competition, they get really into it. I was kind of like, but I thought we were friends. Let's just all support each other, encourage each other.
Right.
And so it just became a totally different animal. I realized that for about 6 months, I lived in this beautiful high-rise apartment that could see the whole downtown skyline. You know, Chicago has an amazing skyline. I realized I hadn't opened my curtains for about 6 months one day, and then I was like, what is going on?
Wow.
So I'm usually a very optimistic, very happy person. So that's when it occurred to me that, something was a little off.
Yeah.
I kind of stopped going to my classes. My professors were a little concerned. So when we had our meeting at the end of the year, they said, things don't look good. You could go to summer school, but, our suggestion is maybe you take a year off. I was like, yeah, that sounds fine. I was like, I don't know why I said, yeah, that sounds fine, because normally I was like, well, initially I was like, no, but I was like, actually, that sounds great. And suddenly this sort of weight was kind of off my shoulder. I did think I was going to go back, but really at the end of that year, I was the happiest I had been in a year. So I knew I absolutely could not. And then I had to realize that I was really doing it for my parents' satisfaction.
Right.
And once you're an adult and you kind of have this aha moment that, oh, you don't have to live up to all of your parents' expectations. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just knew it wasn't that.
Yeah, that's really freeing. And it's funny because you mentioned like the isolation of med school and the competition versus the career you have now, which is just house music and community are synonymous. And so I want to kind of talk about where we're at today with your, long view perspective, because everybody's trying to be a DJ, right? It's the elephant in the room that everybody now kind of wants to get into this thing because it is more accessible. You're not lugging around vinyls anymore. You don't have to buy CDs. Everything goes on a USB. To the detriment, I mean, there's a lot of downsides to streaming, which is a whole other conversation, but it does make it more accessible for people to try it out. So I want to get your take based on, your decades of experience. Is there a bottleneck now? We'll start there.
Okay, is there a bottleneck? Well, I kind of equate it to this. People watch movies, and a lot of times when people grow up, they want to be an actor or an actress. Mm-hmm. And then they get on stage and they find out, oh, I have stage fright. Or they go to school and they realize there are about 30 other people in the class who are way better than them. And so sometimes you have these, ambitions or these goals you set for yourself, or you think that would be cool, I really want to do that, but then when you get into the thick of it, it's not as great. And I would say when I started playing, after myself and 4 other women formed a DJ collective called Super Jane. We were America's first all-women DJ collective, and so we got a lot of notoriety for that. We went all around the world. We, were written up in mainstream magazines like Spin Magazine, and did, national tours sponsored by, big brand sponsors. After that, there was like this great influx of women DJs. Lovely, wonderful, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to represent that women could DJ, ears don't know gender, right? So it should be no difference. And we were 4 women who really cared deeply about the craft. We respected it immensely. We worked on it. We got our, selves together technically to, understand everything that you could and that you can understand about DJing. And so we gained the respect of our peers, and that's why we were able to do the things that we did. A lot of women that came after us, they are not there anymore. And because they were women, people paid attention right away. I'm not gonna lie and say that they didn't get noticed because they were women. They did, because people did want to open up the industry. They did want to be more inclusive. And initially, people did seem like they were in it to win it, right? Mm-hmm. But 5 years later, 10 years later, a lot of those women are not in the industry anymore. They found it too taxing. They found it too hard to deal with a lot of the stuff that comes with it. Being in the music industry in general is difficult. But then you get, the electronic dance music industry, and a lot of things started changing when tech started to improve and made it more accessible. It was just easier to say, oh, they're not really DJing. And then there were girls that were coming along who were not really DJing, and it was more about their look. And even, I dare say it, I hate to say it, but there were girls who were willing to play topless, right? So they were selling something else. And what we really cared about, there's this line, you make a mockery of what I do properly, from a rap song. And so I was like, yeah, people are going to get burned out on that. For people like myself, the women in Super Jane, we continued to do what we did because it was always built on a foundation of respect and bravery, but also like deep reverence and knowledge for the industry and for music and electronic dance and dance music and house music. So one, it will burn you out if you're not really in it for the real reasons that you need to be into it for. People come out to dance, they want their moods elevated. Yes, it looks cool that all the attention is coming to me, but that's not really how it started. And that's why people who are in it for that, it won't sustain you. I hate some of the things that have happened to, artists like Avicii, who just
Right.
got burnt out, burnt up, used up, thrown out, it's horrible. And so you have to understand why you're up there. For me, it was about women and visibility and representation. I'm a Black woman in this field. There really aren't a lot of us that get the notoriety, that get the looks, that get the good bookings, get to do Lollapalooza, get to do ArcFest. There's so few of us. So it's important for me to stay current, to stay relevant, but also to just be an example and be willing to take the hits when they come, but also like get back up.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't get back up. They're like, oh man, I didn't know it was going to be like this. I didn't know it was going to
Right.
be hard. Every career is hard.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is a huge part of this is you have to go out and find a community and be part of one and support other artists and go to their shows. And I feel like a lot of people try to circumvent that or skip that part and just go straight to, me. But no one's going to know who you are if you don't go out and show face and be and participate and like do it for the right reason. So thinking about the collective that you started, I mean, that's really, you all lifted each other up, inspired each other, held each other accountable.
Yep.
And just with society how it is now, everybody's so individualized, we're all in our own little worlds, and I don't think that necessarily happens as much. So maybe that's a piece of advice for someone starting out, like find your tribe and really leverage that.
I
support.
tell students that all the time. I'm at Columbia College. I'm a career advisor and faculty, and so I tell students, a lot of students that I mentored along the way, I've been there for about 6 years. A lot of the students will write me back or say something, or come back later and say, now that I'm out in the real world, I'm having a hard time. What can I do? And they say, I would like to, play at Smart Bar or play at, this place or something like that. And I said, well, there's this thing called paying your dues. And then I also say, what you can do is what a lot of us did in the beginning, which was create your own space and invite people in. And if they like what you've got going on, they will continue to come, and they will, it's a terrible thing to say. It's a little bit of cliche, but if you build it, they will come. But instead of waiting for somebody to put you on, point at you and say, you're the one, you got it, come on. Go and find a place that could benefit from a nice little crowd coming in, even if it's 8 or 10 people, extra
Right.
people sitting around buying a coffee or a tea or something. That's good for a business that is struggling. If you can take your little, mobile little setup, a little Pioneer controller, and get some music going and build an audience, one, you're building, yes, community, and you're helping a business, and yeah, it may not make you money initially, but the kids who are doing great things now, they started with that one little seed.
That's
So
amazing.
build
It's
something.
Planting the seeds. That's a mindset shift, though. You have to switch your mindset into seeing opportunities everywhere, where they don't yet exist.
Yeah.
And that's
Perfect.
That's tough for some people. But once you can, and it takes trial and error too. Like the first coffee shop you go up to might not say yes, but you got to just keep pushing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I did so many parties in the beginning. I was doing a party that started at midnight and went till 8 in the morning. at Shuba's. At Shuba's.
Really?
I convinced them to
That's
let me
awesome.
do like this after hours, and they said, you know what, Lady D, that sounds a little crazy, but they had just opened the space next door called Harmony Grill, and nobody was coming in. And so I guess I am using this from example, but literally I said, well, I think I can get people there. You know, there's a club called Berlin down the street. I think those people will come when it's over, and maybe people from Smart Bar. And then, you know, if I'm at playing any place earlier, I can tell people to come.
Right.
And I know, you know, I have all these friends that DJ, and I can book them, and then we can, you know, you guys can serve breakfast all, you know, till the morning hours.
Sounds amazing.
It was
We
amazing.
need to bring that back.
I know. It was amazing. It was amazing for about 4 months, and then they were like, all right, Lady D, this is great, but we're tired.
Yeah.
But it was something, right? It really did, you know, take
Yeah.
the name, the brand a little bit further. So
Yeah.
every time you do something, it may not be forever, but it can be the thing that kicks things off. You
Right.
know, I started the DJs at the Club Arbea that is on
Yeah.
Grand Street. So
My favorite place.
I mean,
ever.
it's an
a
awesome little
fantastic
space.
program. Yeah.
But they didn't have any sort of music program in the beginning, and so I did one night that was amazing. Like, a lot of people came. They were like, it was only supposed to be one night. I never intended it to become a 2-year-long party, but you know, the owner said, you got to keep this going, and so I kind of did. I was like, all right, fine. So we did a weekly, and then after I got a little tired, made it just a monthly, and then other DJs started to come in and do their nights. So then I kind of, after 2 years, I kind of left it completely. But now it's its own thing. It's its own animal. Like, I never have an attachment to an outcome. I don't want things forever. But if I can, you know, get things started, kick it off, and let people see what the potential is, I'm happy to do it.
That's incredible. And that's such a unique space. And that just goes to show there's such a need for places like that in Chicago that aren't just nightclubs that are open until 5 a.m., whatever. Right. There's food there. There's, you know, great drinks. There's mocktails.
It's
there's
an
a dance
awesome
floor.
date place.
It is. It is. I can't say enough good things about that place.
It's really
but
intimate and, you know, very sexy.
Yeah,
Very nice vibe.
It's just proof positive that, like, you need to take a chance and approach places. And don't be afraid to start because it's not perfect yet. Yeah. Anything you start, it's not going to be perfect from the beginning. I think that's what also prevents people from trying new things.
Yeah, fear is the enemy of creativity. So let yourself, you know, be fearless and create and, you know, open up all the potential possibilities for, you know, what you can do or what you can become. But waiting for somebody to put you on, yeah, it's terrible. It's not going to happen. When you say bottleneck, I think that's a great way to put it, because only a few are going to get in. There's thousands of you trying right now to maybe be DJs or be producers. People will say, you know, there's a formula, like you have to be a producer. Maybe, but there's a lot more, you know, digital music out there. So how are you getting your stuff heard? How are you getting it seen? Oh, get on a Spotify playlist. Okay, how are you going to do that? Maybe you can do it, maybe you can't. There, you know, are techniques and ways to get into the marketplace, but then you got to realize there's so much competition. So how are you going to set yourself apart? How do you differentiate yourself from other people? Because ultimately, that's going to be the thing that makes somebody choose you over the next person. So how, you know, being good and being able to define who you are, what you do, and what you can do, right? Your genres, your specialties, what makes you unique, the differentiators, but also who is your audience? Who are you going to be going after? Who are you going to be talking to? Who's most likely to, you know, appeal, you know, to your particular talent, your particular craft? So setting yourself apart and making yourself noticeable, that's going to be huge. But building relationships with people is probably the most important piece of advice I can give you. I think that there have been way more talented people than me who have burnt out or have not gone as far as they could because they didn't take the time to build relationships with people. Relationships are a two-way street. they're not extraction or transactional. It's what you can give as much as what you can get. So doing those things are going to be the things that, you know, put you apart and put you over the top.